All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. Can we all hear everybody? Welcome to Topics with Mr. Javadi. Today I have another episode continuing the trend with the variety of topics that I think people would be interested in, especially young people aspiring, for example, to be professors or guitar players or artists or whatever it is they want to do in life. I try to bring in wisdom from those who've been there and done that. And today, in this educationally flavored channel, I have a very appropriate guest, Professor Macktima, right?
Yeah,
Dr. Macktima
Macktima.
from Macktima. Sorry about that. So with an MA at the end, right?
Yeah,
Macktima from the University of Northern Arizona University, Flagstaff, Arizona. Beautiful location. I've been there many times. I'm a little bit jealous that he's there. I'm not, but I love that place, and I would love to visit it yet again. I have a bit of a story on that one. I was in Phoenix, Arizona once, taking courses at University of Phoenix, and it was a very very hot experience. Very very hot. I go to the car, and the wheel of the car is just burning, and it was extremely hot, as you can imagine. I think it was sometime in July or something like that. My dad and I drive his old Mercedes up that Highway 17 up to Flagstaff. We get to Flagstaff, come out of the car, we had to put on jackets. So you talk about variety, especially with weather. I mean, I'll never forget it. What a beautiful location. But anyway, Dr. Maxima, welcome to the program. Please take some time to introduce yourself.
yeah. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Like you already said, my name is Dr. Marcus Macktima. My last name, actually, if you want to pronounce it correctly, I guess, is actually Macktima.
Mock
And
time.
yeah, it's Hopi. That's where my grandfather is from, and my grandmother and my mother. They're both from the Apache tribe in Oklahoma. But my grandfather, my mom's grandfather, is from San Carlos, and that's where we grew up. That's from as on the San Carlos Reservation. Um, I didn't stay there as long as everyone else did. My parents grew up there on the reservation. I didn't stay there as long as they did. I was only there till I was about 8 years old. So, because my parents wanted to get me out of the reservation. It's
I see. Right.
not exactly a good place you want to raise a family though, too.
I see.
But yeah.
Well, I mildly disagree because I taught on the Navajo reservation. I loved it,
Mm.
but I can understand you know personal opinions being different and so on. But that's fine. But I love the natives. I worked on the Navajo reservation for 6 years, and evidently that interest still continues because that's why I have you on. Um, Talk to me a little bit about what it was like to grow up on St. Carlos Apache Reservation. It is a fairly well known reservation, but go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. And like I said, I was only there till I was 8 years old, but we went there quite a bit. We were there all the time.
Hmm.
So it did feel like I kind of grew up there. We moved out to Phoenix, went to Glendale in the '90s, and in the '90s in Glendale, that was like probably one of the whitest places you could be at the time. And myself and my brother were the only Indians there, pretty much, and that was a culture shock. But we went back to the reservation quite a lot, and we still had a lot of family there, so we spent a lot of time going back to the reservation. And in the '90s, it was a little bit different. But my parents actually had, or my grandparents, they had a business on the reservation, and that was pretty good, uh, pretty well thought of. And we were certainly in a much better circumstance than a lot of other people were, because the reservation is a very, it can be a very desolate place for a lot of
Yeah.
people, and economically, it's not the best situation. And But the culture, though, the culture I felt like was very different at the time in the 90s. And it's somewhat diminished a little bit more and more recently. But we are still trying to keep it alive and all that too. And but I remember going to sunrise ceremonies like very often, going to the dances and going to the ceremonies. And I mean, it was a very regular occurrence. And seeing grandparents and going over to their places. And it felt a little bit safer during that time. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's definitely filled with a lot more crime than there used to be, I think, and it's not as safe as it used to be. But it was still a very culturally rich place. You still saw people walking around in camp dresses, right? So traditional wear. And you saw people, speaking Apache all the time, and that was really cool to me. So I grew up hearing Apache all the time. And a lot of us always joke about how we don't know how to speak it, but we know what they're saying when they're yelling at us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When they
Well, that's a lot of my story because I was there for 6 years on the Navajo, and I learned a little bit of Navajo. I couldn't speak very fluently at all, but sometimes if I'm listening and people are having a conversation, I could sort of tell what they were talking about. And I would tell them, "Is this what you're talking about?" They would smile and say, "Yeah, that's what we're saying." So that was kind of an experience I had for a little bit, and but I loved it. And I agree with you. The people, the culture, it's just a very fascinating world. Um, so how did you complete your education? Did you go off the reservation to high school? What did you do to, middle school, high school, that stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So my parents actually went to Globe High School, and they enjoyed their time for what it was, but they wanted something different for us
Uh huh.
as children. And they didn't- they experienced a lot of racism, a lot of hurt going to those schools, and they thought that maybe if we went to the city, that it would be better. So they had us go to Phoenix.
Oh,
um,
okay.
and we went. I went to high school in Glendale, and graduated there. But I graduated early also, and I did pretty well, I guess, in high school academically. And I didn't really think I did, but but
Wow.
all I wanted to do was get out of high school. A lot of kids at that age, they want to get out. And at the time, being native didn't really cross my mind at all.
Hmm.
I didn't think about it. That wasn't something I thought about on often. And um, I just wanted to be a regular person, and I feel like that's kind of the consequence of being in a place like a city, is that you kind of lose a little bit of that attachment to who your culture is and was. And so, but when I was in high school, I did have a child really early in life. So in high school, I thought, okay, well now I have to step up and I have to take on responsibility, and now I have to figure out what I'm going to do with my life because I have to provide for a child that's coming now. And so I actually enlisted in the military. I enlisted in the Air Force,
I see.
and at the time this was 2004, and this is right after 9/11. Right. So recruiting officers are going crazy at this time. And, of course, they're taking everyone they can. And, and I wanted to go into the Air Force because that was the only one that my mom would sign off on because I was
Mhm.
still underage technically because I was 17, about to turn 18 soon. But recruiters said, we still gotta get your parents' signature. And my mom would only sign off on the Air Force. I tried to go to Marines because my dad was a Marine, and Marines are really big on the reservation too, because a lot of people end up joining the Marines because of that kind of like that warrior culture kind of thing, right? It resonates with a lot of Native people, and
Yeah.
and so Marines were the thing to do, and I tried to go there, but mom wouldn't sign off on that. So
Well, and I remember, your comment is so right on, because I remember on the Navajo reservation, there's just a ton of patriotism. And a friend of mine who was teaching there, and I were talking about that. It's in a separate video. Um, but we just saw a ton of patriotism. People really valuing the country, which just really touches my heart.
mm,
And just the love for service and for nation. It's really big, isn't it?
It is. It's really big, and
Yeah, yeah,
it's a little interesting too, that dynamic, because
yeah,
it's the military that was be used against us in so many cases, and we end up
yeah, yeah.
joining it and everything. So
Mm,
it is an interesting discussion to talk about, military patriotism, and then its connection to the larger story
hmm.
in Native American history. So it is something that I actually talk about in my classes too. And but you know what, I didn't stay in the military very long. I actually got injured during training, and they had to discharge me, and so I didn't go in for that long. But after that, I was like kind of lost a little bit, like trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Then I met my
Hmm.
wife, and my my wife set me straight, and ended up, I need to get my education. I need to go back to school. I need to do that. So I started out in community college of Denver, and I tried to go there. I did it for a year and then flunked out. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I don't want to do education. I don't want to do this. This is terrible. This is a bad idea. Um, so I actually didn't want to go to school for a long time,
Right, right.
and then when I met my wife, I was like, I need to get it. I need to get a degree. I need to get something. So I said, I'm going to go to school, and I thought that would look good to her dad too. So this, like, I swear I have goals and ambition. I swear.
Yeah.
So I decided to just go to school and see if I could do something, and I ended up moving back to Phoenix, and because my son and his mom were living in Denver, and I was like, I'm gonna go back to Phoenix, and I brought my son with too, and my wife came with me, and I went to Phoenix, and well, North Phoenix. I ended up going to Paradise Valley Community College, and I went for 2 years. I thought I was gonna be a classical guitar major,
Oh,
and
wow, wow.
yeah, did not
Yeah,
want to do history or anything. Like, I want to do guitar. I want to do guitar. So I
yeah.
took a lot of guitar classes, and then when it came time, my wife moved out here. She's like, I've never been to Phoenix before. I want to try living there. I said, no, you don't. No, you don't. You don't want to try living in Phoenix. So she's like, no, I want to try it. And then after 2 years, she's like, we got to leave. This is too hot. I'm like, yeah, I know. See, I told you. But so we decided to go somewhere new. So we thought we'd try something, And by that point, we've had another kid, and so we're like, all right. Well, she said, I kind of want to be a little bit closer to my family, but not too close. I said, okay. So I was always a big OU football fan, Oklahoma football.
Oklahoma, yeah.
That's what my family grew up with too. And because my grandmother's from Oklahoma, so she really liked Oklahoma. So I was like, I want to try that. And my wife said, because she grew up a Nebraska fan, and during the time when she was growing up, Nebraska and Oklahoma were the rivals. And
Yeah.
uh, and so she told me, if you had told me that you were an Oklahoma fan, we never would have gotten married. So but she said, but I hate Phoenix so much that I'm willing to go to Oklahoma. So we moved to Oklahoma, and I got accepted over there into the music program, and thought I was going to do classical guitar. And I did it for a couple of years, and I did a recital and everything. I actually did a recital on Halloween night, and
Wow.
that was fun. And the classical guitar teacher said, "Hey, I need one more. Are you available tomorrow?" I'm like, "You're giving me one day notice to do a
Yeah.
recital. Like, I only know these songs." And I told him the songs I picked and I had and everything. He said, "Oh, that's fine. That's fine. That'll work. That'll work. I just need someone to be here." I said, "Okay." So I did a recital, and it was cool. It was fun. I enjoyed it a lot. I loved guitar. I've been playing it for over 30 years now, almost. I think I started when I was like 8, 9, 10, no, not 8, no, about 10, 11, 12 is when I
Yeah.
started, and
Yeah.
been playing ever since. And um, but I thought that maybe guitar might not actually pay the bills.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I need to be a little bit more practical with my degree, and it was becoming really intensive. And they said, you're going to be taking like 20 something credit hours of work, but you're only going to get credit for 12. And I said, that's just too much. That's just too much. And then we had more kids too, because we didn't want to stop our lives for that, and so we
Right.
wanted we wanted to keep having more children, because we wanted to have that many kids. And so we decided, okay, well, I'm going to switch over to something a little bit easier, and then I'm going to do history instead. And so I moved on with history. I liked history a lot. I didn't really know a whole lot about it, but I was like, I'm interested in it. Actually started doing a lot more Middle Eastern history stuff and everything
Oh,
too.
okay.
I was fascinated by it, and because of the Christian dynamics too that I grew up with. I was like, what is all of this about, kind of thing, questioning all these other things too. And my wife's also a Christian. We're Christian, and but I didn't know what that meant really. So I wanted to investigate that further, and I did Middle Eastern religions and everything, and started focusing on a lot of that stuff. And then I started thinking about my own culture. I was like, I have a culture too. I have
Yeah.
like, like I'm from somewhere too. Like, what is and I had a professor who told me this too, and she is one of my music professors, and she said, you could probably do a master's degree just doing research on your own family and your own native culture. I said,
Mhm.
what? You can do that? And she said, yeah, people would be really interested in that. And I said, oh, okay. So I kind of started a little bit more, and so that kind of sparked it a little bit more, and I started thinking about it more and focusing on my own culture, and then I thought, what am I going to teach my kids? What am I going to
Mhm.
teach them about who we are and where we come from? And so I started really thinking about it. And in my capstone class, in my undergrad class for history, one of the last classes you take before you graduate, I was like, I'm going to focus on the tribe, focus on
Mhm.
the culture, focus on the history.
Right.
And I wrote something on the 19th century Apache wars and all that, and kind of talking about Geronimo because that's a big name in Apache, and so I focused on that stuff, um, and tried to really dissect it a little bit more, and I found an interest in it and a passion in it. And then when I graduated, I was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm done with school. That was 6 years of my life, and I'm done. I don't want to do anything else. I want to just go
Mhm.
somewhere and work somewhere, or I thought my dad worked for the BIA, and I thought, I'll go work for the BIA too.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
easy job. I can get in there easily. And my dad was saying, yeah, you could get in there really easily. You should do it and all that. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do that. Thought that might be the job for me. And um, but I took a class in Native American Studies with the professor, and she was the chair of the department at the time. And she said, "Hey, you should really apply for the master's program." And I said, "No, no, I'm not doing that." And she said, "There's a chance we could give you money." And I said,
Mhm.
"You have my attention." Right. So
Yeah.
like, okay, so let's check it out then. And I did something that I will tell all my children in the future to never do, and that is to never make a decision without your wife,
Mhm.
because that will come back to bite you in so many
Oh,
ways.
I say amen on that one. Okay, go
I
ahead.
made the decision to go
Yeah.
back to school because she was
Yeah.
like, we're done. We're done. I said, you're right. I'm done. And then I said, hey, guess what? We're going to do 2 more years for a master's program. And she's like, what? Yeah. So I kind of, messed that one up. I should have talked to her about it and said, hey, this is what I think I want to do and all that, and didn't do that. But so I made the decision. I applied and I got in, and they gave me, a GTA ship, and they paid for my school and all that too. I was like, this is a great deal. Like, how could I not pass this up? So I went and did the Native American Studies degree at OU, and decided to focus more back, go back on my culture again, really figure it out and everything,
Mm.
really dissect it. And I had some great professors there. Professor Christopher Basaldu was great. He was a great mentor. He's no longer there, unfortunately, because he had a certain circumstance that made things really complicated, and um, kind of almost targeting him and all that too. But which was unfortunate. But and then I had another professor who was an elder in the Kiowa tribe, and he was fantastic. Dr. Jerry Bread was awesome. He kind of guided me on that as kind of like my surrogate elder in there, and really helped me push and question a lot of things. And but I did a master's thesis under these guys, and I kind of focused on the Oak Flat mine that is kind of been in the news lately. Um,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of focus on that. And at the time when I was going through my grad program, it was just like starting out, and it was starting to blow up. And
Mhm.
I had some questions about it. I was like, why are people talking about this? What's the situation like? And I wanted to investigate that. So I did. And then I really was asking questions about it. And then people were saying, well, this place is not sacred. And I'm hearing on the other side, oh, yeah, this place is sacred. I don't know why they're trying to do this. And I was like, okay, that's confusing. why are there two different people saying, or two different groups of people saying these things? And so I looked at that question as my master's topic. Well, why discussing the sacredness of the of Oak Flat, and in my investigation, in my research and all that, I really came to this conclusion that, like, well, they're kind of both right. If you look at the historiography and all that, and look at the history of our people and all that, then it makes sense that these people are saying that it is, and these other people are saying it's not, because we came from different peoples, you know. So what grandparents are talking about when it comes to sacredness, it's going to be different than someone else's grandparents because we came from different places and different peoples. So it makes sense to me. So that was kind of my conclusion on that, and a lot of people liked it and everything, and it added to that discussion, and it didn't really go anywhere with it, um, but then, once I was finishing up that research, the history department, I took some history classes again in at the grad level this time though, and they came back to me and said, "Hey, you should really think about applying for the PhD program." And when I heard PhD, I was like, "Absolutely not, no way, no, that's way more time. That's way more effort. That's way more money." I said, "Absolutely not. No, no, no." And they said, "Hey, we might be able to give you some money." I was like, "Oh, okay, you have my attention again. So what are we talking here?" So, but this time I made the correct choice, and I went and talked to my wife first. So
Good for you.
I learned my lesson the second time. So,
Yeah.
so I talked to her about it. I said, "Hey, what do you think?" And she said, "Well," she said, I'll support you in this decision if we want to do this, but we have to make it work because we have three children." And I said, "I know, I understand that." And she said, "Okay, so here's what we should do then." So they had a list of all the fellowships and everything that they offered, all the funding offers that they had. And I said, "What would it take for us to agree to this?" And she said, "This one." And she pointed to the very, very top.
Hmm.
"We can't survive if we don't have this." And I said, "Okay." I didn't really want to do it anyway. So I was like, "Okay, maybe I have an out here. I don't really want to do the PhD program. I really don't want to do this, but I kind of want to try it out and see what I get and see what happens." He said, "Okay, if we don't get this, then we cannot do this." I said, "That sounds good to me." So I applied, waited to some time. Graduation's coming up for my master's, and then I get the email, from the department, and it said, "Congratulations, you've been accepted into the program, and here's the fellowship that we're going to offer you." It was that fellowship.
Fantastic, fantastic. I listen to you and I draw from all that don't give up. Stay with your path, stay with your goal. What a wonderful living example you've been in demonstrating that. And that's just phenomenal. And so I'm very grateful that you stuck it out and you got to where you got. And speaking of getting where you got, so basically what you teach is history, Native American history in particular, at a wonderful, wonderful college. It's beautiful, Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. Worth the visit to anybody that has sort of an academic interest like you and I do. It's worth the visit. It's got a gorgeous campus. But anyway, go ahead and talk about that, what you do there, and the courses you teach, etc.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. So actually, Northern Arizona has been fantastic here, and very supportive environment, and, very supportive native peoples and cultures. And I love that about this campus. And I actually got here just before I finished my PhD program. They actually offered me a job before I even graduated, and which I thought was fantastic because, in academia, it's really hard to find a job
Right, right.
in academia. And so I felt very fortunate, and they said they wanted to teach Native American history because they hadn't been offering it at all for a long time, because they couldn't keep someone in that position. And so they wanted someone who was native and understood it and could
Mm,
teach it and everything. And so they reached out to me, and NAU was actually my very top pick for when
mm,
I graduated. If I was going to teach, that I wanted to be at NAU. And I thought I was gonna not get anything until like way later in my career or something. Like maybe I'll retire there instead or something. Maybe I'll go to these other universities first and then retire at NAU. But NAU came first, so I was like, okay, I'm going then. So so I do teach Native American history here, primarily, and I cover a lot of different broad topics, because I'm really finding that a lot of people just don't understand the basics of Native American history.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
It's wild to me because like it really shows, what they're focusing on in the schools, in public school. They're not really emphasizing a lot of Native history, and they might sprinkle things throughout. I'll have students who can recall some things that they heard in class once or twice or something like that. But for the most part, a lot of these students are coming in not knowing anything about Native American history. And it's really crazy to me that, with especially in Arizona, where we have such a high Native population, we have 29 tribes in this state, and no one really knows the history as much.
Yeah, yeah. It's pathetic. I'll say it. As an Iranian American, I was born in Iran, not in the U.S., but I've lived here since I was about 16 years old. So I'm very much American now. I've lived longer in America than I did in Iran. But as an immigrant myself, I will say this. I think, in this system, focus a lot on the planet and not enough on our own turf.
Mm,
And our own turf has a lot to do with, in my humble opinion, with all the native indigenous people. And we're not giving that enough attention, in my opinion. And so I'm glad that you said that, because I totally agree. But anyway, go ahead.
yeah, yeah, and so it's kind of been my mission here to just just try to educate as much as I possibly can.
Yeah,
Let people know
yeah.
about these things. And in my Native American history class, I would love it if we could split it up because the
Hmm.
class that I teach right now, it's like, hey, cover 20,000 years of history in a
Mm.
16-week course, and I'm like, that's just not enough
Right.
time. So I'm trying to get that split up into two different courses, but so I do teach that, and I teach graduates and undergraduates as well. So in a lot of these upper division courses and graduate level courses, it's the same thing. Since I'm the only one that's been teaching Native American history in this capacity for in such a long time, that people aren't getting that education, and they might get it in some other classes too, but just not in the same way that I'm doing it. But I'm having to like reteach Native American history at the graduate level and up in the upper division level. But it's kind of changing now. It's kind of refocusing itself, where I'm getting students from the lower division course now and coming into the upper division courses, and they have come now with this base understanding of Native American history for me. So I don't have
Right.
to teach it again. So it's kind of shifting now. So now students are getting the education that they need, and they're coming back as well and wanting to learn more about it. So I teach in my upper division and graduate level classes. I go further. I go deeper into the issues, and we talk about very important issues, like when it comes to like the boarding schools, the Indian removal period, all
Oh
these
yeah, big
big
one.
things, the
Yeah,
big moments in history
yeah,
that we
yeah.
are missed. And then on top of that, I also teach classes on Arizona indigenous history,
Hmm.
as well, because we're in Arizona, we should know more about this stuff too, right?
Oh, without a doubt, without a
And
doubt.
I
Yeah,
mean, we should know about the place that we're in. And
yeah,
so I
yeah.
teach an Arizona Indigenous History course also, where we talk about the native peoples in Arizona. And I can't cover every single tribe, but I do my best to try to cover as many peoples as I can in that class, and have discussions, because the Tohono O'odhams are over there on the border. That's a big discussion right now too, because they're sitting right on the border of Mexico and the United States. And we talk about central Arizona in relation to the tribes there, because they deal with the water issues in Phoenix. And all these different tribes matter. Navajo and Hopi, they're right there up top in the Four Corners regions. and
Yeah, that's right.
and
That's right.
they dealt with a lot of mining as well on their territories, and uranium mining in the 50s, after the Second World War.
Uh-huh.
They're a part of the Manhattan Project, but no one talks about that, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
uranium that came from there for the
yeah,
for the Manhattan Project, that came from the Navajo.
yeah.
And So we don't talk about these kinds of things. The participation in the history, right? They participated in all of these things. So I try to focus on that in the class that I teach for in Indigenous Arizona history. So I'm teaching all these different things, trying to get people, very much aware of the past.
That's just fantastic. Thank you so much for what you do in that regard. For sure, for sure. Um, Past projects, writings, and current ones, research, etc. What are you involved in doing or have done?
Yeah, yeah. So I have a few publications already out. I have articles. I did write my master's thesis. I actually used as a chapter in my dissertation, and I reorganized it, revamped it, and tried to talk more about Oak Flat in a little bit more of a contemporary setting, because we're still dealing with that now. And I was actually on a panel with KJZZ talking about the Oak Flat situation and recently here a few months ago, because it's kind of ramped up a lot more. And Trump has come out saying that he supports the mining and everything too. And of course, that's caused a lot of concern. What does that mean for the tribe and for the reservation and all that too? And so I did publish an article on that history, and that was published in an anthology series, The American West in the 21st Century. Um,
Hmm.
that was published by the University of Nebraska Press and with the collaboration with the Charles Red Center at BYU. So I did provide that chapter in there. I also did wrote a piece in the Journal of Arizona History, and they actually did an all Indigenous issue, which included all Indigenous historians and editors and peer reviewers who were also all Indigenous as well. So they were all native, and it was a great issue, great contributions by everybody in that issue, and
That's
um,
wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I got the privilege of being able to participate on that, and I wrote about my people's history on that in relation to the Coolidge Dam, the 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 separations that we have in the late 19th century as well. We're trying to and the removals that we have on our reservation, how that's affected our identity, how we view ourselves, and 19th century policy, all this kind of stuff I bring up in that, and then how we develop as a tribe, as a tribal nation. Because before that, we're not a single tribe. There's not an Apache nation, right? That doesn't exist. It's not until
Mm-hmm.
the 1930s that actually becomes a thing, is that we actually become an Apache nation.
Hmm.
um, because before that we were clans and bands, right? We were separate
Yeah.
peoples altogether, and so I try to emphasize that stuff, and I do a lot of historical research for my tribe as well, and um, I am producing a textbook as well because I also teach at the tribe's college, the St. Carlos Apache College, and being led by some great people right now, but the class that I teach is Apache history. It's
Mm.
essentially my dissertation. And so I try to teach my own people, like, hey, look, these are the things that I've had, that I've looked at and that I've researched. And it's a lot of things that we don't talk about. Because all these things, all these questions that I had, I had all these questions about our history, what's going on in our past, like what do we do with this, what do we do with that, not all these different questions that I had. And I found out a lot of people have the same questions, right,
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
reservation. And so they're asking these questions, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I can provide that, right? This is how I can be a service to my community.
You bet.
And
You bet.
and so I decided to do that, and I developed
Yeah.
the Apache history course. um, did I provide all my research, because to me it's not about me, it's about us. So
Yes.
all the
Yes.
things that I
Well
got,
said. Well said. Yeah.
all the things that I got from this,
Yeah.
I was put in a position where I was privileged to be able to do that, and so I'm giving back by giving you all the research that I've done because I was in a position to be able to do that. And so I provide all my databases for free to anyone who wants to look at it. So all the research that I've done, and I have like probably over like 20,000 documents of material that
Mm.
I've acquired over the years, and I give that to my students. Like, hey, you guys should have this. You need to know this stuff too. You need to understand what this is.
That's super. That's fantastic. I've been out of the classroom for about 4 years now. I'm trying to, I taught for 30 years, so now I'm trying to do this YouTube world, and I tell you, I miss it sometimes. I really do. And you just kind of got me remembering, what it's like to be in that wonderful world of teaching. It really is. It is, isn't it? It's
Yeah, yeah,
wonderful.
it's great. It's very rewarding too, especially
Yeah, yeah,
it doesn't have to be everybody that can appreciate it, but like if you get a student that comes up to you and says, "Hey, I really loved this," or "I appreciated a lot of what you said," like
yeah.
even if it's one student, right? That's amazing.
Oh,
It feels
it's gold. Yeah,
yeah, it really is,
it really is. Yeah.
and
It's
that
gold. Well, I love what you're doing. I appreciate everything you're doing. If people want to, and by the way, we'll be in touch because I mean, you're a source of knowledge unlike anything I've seen. You're fantastic. You're like a library. You're like a human library. So, if people want to reach out to you, how can they reach you? What would be your recommendation?
Yeah, sure. I have a couple different addresses, email addresses that you can contact me on.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, I have the university one, northern marcus.mactima at nau.edu, and
Okay.
I have a tribal one as well for the tribal college. If you want to reach out to me there. That's my it's mmactima at tocc.edu. That's my primary one for the college, and I teach classes there still too, and we do it all online. So if
Okay.
people want to actually enroll in those classes and learn more about Apache history, that's open to anybody to enroll. And I think right now, if you're native, we actually offer free tuition for native.
But no, this is just fantastic. So as we wrap up, I am always thinking that some kid is watching, some kid that's maybe in high school, maybe 11th grade, 12th grade. They're thinking about what they're going to do with their lives, or maybe even they're in the first year of community college. You remember how that goes. I went to community college, by the way, when I first started. So, what are the advices that you have to the young people who are trying to go in your path, basically, be a professor, be an academician? What would be your advice to them?
Stay focused.
Yeah.
It's very easy to lose focus, and maintain that tenacity, because it's going to get hard. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
going to get hard, and sometimes you're going to lose interest. Sometimes you're not going to be able to do the things that you want to do because you're required to do something else. That's always a situation too.
Hmm.
But just because you don't know what you want to research or look at, that's a big hang up too, is that people get to this level and you're like, I don't even know what I want to research. And
Yeah. Yeah.
don't let that stop you though.
Yeah.
And if it comes down to it, look at your own family. Like you exist as a result of history also.
Yeah.
And your family, means something to that too. And I do this with my students as well. And I tell them like, look, we're talking about history, but your family experienced some of this stuff too, probably. And
Yeah.
look at yourself and see what your family story is, and you might find something there, because your family deserves to have a story be told also, right? So,
That's right. That's
yep.
right. Well, Dr. Macktima, thank you so much. Thank you for your generosity of your time and just being with us today and sharing all this wonderful knowledge. I will be in contact with you for further projects because I just find this very fascinating, and I think you're a phenomenal source of knowledge. A
Thank you.
human library. Here we go. So, thank you so much, Dr. Macktima. You have a good one.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You betcha.